If I had saved those boxes and taken care of those toys, they'd be worth a lot of money today. But instead, I played with them. That's okay. They were meant to be played with, and no amount of money could replace the fun they gave me. Many years later, I had the privilege of rediscovering my old friends. What seemed like a box of junk was actually a box of treasure. How had I forgotten their faces, their colors, their personalities? They were more than just objects. But now, what place did they have in my adult life? That's what this program is about. Across the world, men and women, young and old, have found a way to capture a spark of childhood and keep it burning throughout their lives. They collect toys for the art they possess, the history they represent, and the memories they recall. We'll journey through the last 35 years of modern action toys and meet some of the people who collect them. They may have different viewpoints and motivations, but they are all in love with toys. Action figures were born in the 60s, but before that, children played with solid plastic figurines. These statues were frozen in one position. Children had to use their imagination to bring them to life. They were made by companies such as Palmer, Heartland, and Multiple Plastics. But the king was Louis Marx. From the mid-50s through the 70s, Marx issued and reissued a variety of figurines and playsets. They depicted cowboys and Indians, soldiers, astronauts, and other generic action characters. Stereotypes were taken for granted in those days. There was still lingering bitterness from recent wars. Marx produced licensed characters from the mid-60s to the mid-70s. These included cartoon characters, superheroes, and monsters. For years, girls had played with generic, childlike dolls. But this changed in 1959, when Mattel introduced Barbie, the definitive fashion doll. Inspired by the German doll Lily, Barbie was shapely and sophisticated. Mattel supported her with an endless array of accessories and companions. Her appearance changed with the times. In the 70s, she acquired the softer, more innocent look that she has to this day. This is a 70s Ken, Barbie's boyfriend. Introduced in 1961, Ken was the precursor to the boy's action figure. But Ken was still a girl's doll. The idea of a doll for boys was socially unacceptable. But models were acceptable for boys. In 1961, Aurora released its first licensed character model kit, Frankenstein. A monster fad had swept the youth culture, and Aurora fueled the craze by producing 12 more monster kits over the next 5 years. These models seem innocent today, but at the time, their scary subject matter made them controversial. That didn't stop them from being incredibly successful and influential. Marx also took part in the 60s monster craze by producing a line of battery-operated monster toys. Perhaps the best was the remote-controlled Frankenstein. Standing over a foot tall, he had the power to pick up objects and carry them away. All of these toys paved the way for Hasbro to introduce the first doll for boys, G.I. Joe. To avoid stigma, Hasbro called the dolls action figures, inventing a new toy genre. A scar on Joe's cheek proved he was no sissy. Joe was 12 inches tall, fully articulated, and complemented by a wide array of accessories. Starting with 4 Armed Forces dolls, Hasbro expanded the line, adding foreign soldiers and Joes in different uniforms. G.I. Joe became an American icon and the most famous action figure of all time. G.I. Joe's success led other companies to produce their own action figures. The most important was probably Ideal's Captain Action, released in 1966. Captain Action was similar to G.I. Joe, but instead of military uniforms, Captain Action wore the costumes of famous superheroes. In this way, one doll could become many different characters. Captain Action appeared just as the Batman TV show sparked a new superhero fad. As the space race drew toward a climax, Mattel produced the major Matt Mason line of astronaut toys. Unlike other 12-inch plastic figures of the era, Matt Mason was a 5-inch rubber and wire bendy. These toys were a serious attempt at depicting space exploration. But Major Matt still encountered alien beings like Scorpio, a villain that could light up. Captain Laser was an alien friend. The plastic 12-inch figure seemed very different from Matt Mason, but was nevertheless part of the same set. The success of Major Matt Mason led Colorforms to create the Outer Spacemen in 1968. These unusual alien bendies were the first 3-dimensional toys from the company that made its name producing vinyl stick-on sets. Each distinctive creature came from a planet in our solar system. This fantasy was shattered by the 1969 moon landing that failed to find any aliens. Kids lost interest in the toys, and a planned second series was never released. Today, the Colorforms aliens are recognized as one of the most unique action figure lines ever. This is the Toy Man Toy Show at Machinist Hall in Bridgeton, Missouri. Toy shows are the grand arenas of the toy collecting hobby. Hundreds are held across the country each year. According to a poll by Toy Collector magazine, a leading toy publication, each of its 175,000 readers attend an average of about 4 toy shows a year and spend over $2,600 a year on their hobby. That money goes to toy dealers like Alan Fishbeck.
It's basically just something for fun. I don't really make a living at this. It's not something I have to do every weekend. It's just something I do 5 times a year. You just can't get everything. There's just too much. So just concentrate on what you like and not worry about anything else. So no matter where you go, there'll be somebody who's interested in whatever there is out there, whether it be military, die-cast, toy soldiers, models, figurines, tin plate, anywhere from as far back as you can go to present. So, I mean, there's something for everybody, basically.
Actually, my mom kept all my toys when I was a kid. We had all the original boxes, which most people didn't, get rid of. And it was just one of those hobbies where I found out there was an actual market for those toys, and just went ahead and saw what the potential value was as far as investment value. It's a fun type of thing to be able to go out and find toys that a lot of people can't find, and then being able to do a show like this, meet a lot of different people, being able to sell, let's say extra toys. That kind of helps pay for your hobby. Or how should I say, you can't take $5 to $10 and put it in the bank and make what you can on a toy, say at a toy show, where you can actually turn around and take that same toy and make $50, $60 on it. There's a lot more people out there with a lot of investment money to spend that see the potential, kind of like the stock market, and being able to make some money doing the toy thing. And there's a lot of people a lot older than I am actually investing big bucks in order to recreate their childhood.
I agree. I think it's hotter now than it ever has. People are getting more intense where they're willing to plop down their whole paycheck for something that, as 2 years ago, would only cost $10. It's just getting more and more outrageous all the time. I think it'll only keep going up. I think this is right now is the only way that people can relive their childhood. They have happy memories with these toys, and they want to go back and be a kid again. It's an addiction. Once you get into it, I just want to have every piece I can find. I love the thrill of the chase. That's exactly why I do it. I like to go out and find that good buy at a yard sale, or find that good buy at a flea market, or come to a toy show such as this.
The only way to make the toy community grow is to get new toy collectors into the community. One way to get them into community is to get them involved in toy shows so that they know a little bit what prices are, know what they can afford, what they cannot afford, and to start small. I started with Matchbox. Do not collect $1,000 cast iron banks when you can collect Matchbox or Hot Wheels. You collect what you can afford to collect. You don't want to go in debt. You don't want to have to, later you get in dire trouble and you have to sell your collection. But you should not try to collect what you cannot afford. Most of us, the majority, are not doctors or lawyers. We're just common working folks. We're over our heads and our wives get very irritated with us.
Attending a toy show can be a great introduction to the hobby. A new collector can meet and talk with hundreds of other collectors and dealers. There is no better place to see a greater variety of toys. Old and new, rare and common. But collectors are wise to treat their first trip to a toy show as more of a learning experience than a shopping experience. Mego's official World's Greatest Superheroes hit stores in 1972. They were a smash success, overthrowing G.I. Joe as the top action figure line and firmly establishing Mego as the action figure king. Mego's reign lasted through the mid-70s as they churned out figures based on TV, movies, and historical legend. Though Mego experimented with the 10 and 12-inch figures, their bread and butter were the 8-inch figures. The smaller size made them less expensive and easier to play with, and became the standard format for 70s action figures. Many other 70s toys bore a resemblance to the Megos. Mattel's Big Jim was a little taller and more rugged and had action features, but the Mego influence is still obvious. From major toy lines to off-brand figures, mid-70s action figures possessed the classic Mego characteristics: smaller size, cloth costumes, vinyl heads, and fully posable bodies. Some of the best Mego-styled 70s figures were the off-brand monster toys, made by small companies such as A-Hi, Lincoln, and Tomland. These creatures were often found lurking in gift shops, grocery stores, and dime stores, and were the last echo of the 60s monster fad. The best of these were probably the 1973 A-Hi Super Monsters, perhaps the most serious and gothic-looking monster action figures ever made. A-Hi changed their design many times during their short run, but their basic appearance was based on the Aurora Monster models, which had just been reissued. After being sold to Nabisco in 1971, Aurora fell on difficult times. Nevertheless, they continued to produce the classic model lines like the prehistoric scenes. To compete with action figures, Aurora began to make their models posable. In the meantime, they reissued older 60s lines such as their comic scenes and monster models. But now there was serious competition. Other companies such as Fun Dimensions, Adar, and MPC were making imaginative figure kits like the Pirates of the Caribbean and the gigantic insect scenes. Aurora finally went bankrupt in 1977, and the figural model kit seemed to die with it. Not all action figures were 8 inches tall in the 1970s. Kenner's $6 Million Man line was based on a popular TV show about a bionic man named Steve Austin. These successful toys incorporated many different mechanical action features. Steve Austin was probably the inspiration for Atomic Man from the G.I. Joe Adventure Team. Vietnam had created a profound anti-war sentiment, forcing Hasbro to remove Joe from his military environment and turn him into an adventurer. Instead of enemy soldiers, Joe now fought giant spiders, gorillas, and mummies. In 1976, Joe went totally sci-fi. Hasbro shrunk him to 8 inches and created the Super Joe set, which featured more alien characters like Gore. The line was canceled after a short year, marking an end to the first era of G.I. Joe. The mid to late 70s saw a trend toward large dolls with complex action features. Two examples from Mattel are Pulsar, the Ultimate Man, and Hypnos, his evil enemy. These 12-inch dolls had transparent chest plates, which displayed Hypnos's hypnotic power, and Pulsar's biological functions. Crusher was another example of Mattel's experimental approach to action figures in the 70s. This big, mean, soft vinyl figure could be smushed flat. It would stay that way until a valve was opened, allowing it to return to its original shape. Electro Man and Zog were deluxe electronic adversaries. Electro Man was 18 inches tall, fully costumed, and fully posable. Using his flashing helmet light, he could stun the rampaging Zog, knocking the monster unconscious. Rom, the Space Knight, was another electronic toy from Ideal. Rom had a variety of light-up accessories that helped him fight galactic crime. When Mego's 8-inch figures began to lose their appeal, the company released the 3 3/4-inch Micronauts. These original figures depicted a fanciful race of tiny cyborg beings. Ironically, another company using the same 3 3/4-inch format was about to spell doom for Mego. When Star Wars was released in May of 1977, it became the biggest movie event of all time. Its success took everyone by surprise, including the toy companies. Kenner held the license, but didn't have the toys ready until spring of '78. The long wait merely built up the anticipation for the toys, which became an unprecedented sensation. Star Wars would dominate the toy market in the next decade. Action figures became less articulated. Cloth costumes gave way to painted details. The small 3 3/4-inch format became the new standard for action figures, wiping out the old 8 and 12-inch formats and putting Mego out of business. Kenner continued to release figures for The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. The last movie-based Star Wars line was The Power of the Force, which included characters from all 3 films. The large-size Star Wars figures were one of the few successful large-format lines of the late 70s. They are easily some of the nicest large-size action figures ever made. they never quite achieved the popularity of the small figures, they brought the characters to life in a way that small toys never could. IG-88 and Boba Fett were the only Empire Strikes Back figures Kenner made in the large size. Lando Calrissian and other figures were planned, but the line was canceled before they were produced. In 1979, Kenner released what may be the ultimate large-size action figure, the 18-inch Alien doll. It was the first toy based on an R-rated movie, and kids had never seen anything like it. Never before had a toy looked so evil. As a result, it flopped, bringing an end to the era of the great large-format action figures. Ken Raquel is typical of many young toy collectors. He keeps up with the latest toy trends and collects mainly recent figures. His room is a monument to his love of superheroes and his enthusiasm for the hobby. But even though he collects new toys, it was the old toys he first fell in love with.
I actually started haphazardly collecting in 1970 with the Mego action figures. My mother would take me out every Monday to pick up a new action figure, and those were anywhere from Superman to Shazam to some Marvel heroes like Captain America and the Hulk, and they came in boxes, and that's where it all started. And through the years I would gradually pick up other items similar to that, and then for a period I stopped, and now, since I have a little bit more money, I've gone out and purchased and kept in the original packages a lot of what you see on the walls around here. I have a complete collection up to date of the X-Men, and then I have other collections that I've integrated along with it as well. Ever since my dad brought home a stack of comic books for me when I was a kid, I was really fascinated by all of these heroes that could do more than the average human being. I was always really impressed. And then when I saw these figures that, that were lifted right out of the page, I thought that these are the greatest things in the world.
Ken places a high value on variations and tries to collect every one he can find.
There are 3 variations of cords on these Weapon X's. There's 2 variations of the Juggernaut. The Forge. One has a brown holster to keep his gun, the other one has a yellow holster. The initial release on the Rogue, the paint job everybody was waiting. To me, it almost seems like it's a complete set, and I have to keep it a complete set. If I hear about one slight variation on something, whether it's a slightly different color on them or there's a different accessory in it, I pretty much go out of my way to try to find it. And I think it's there's a self-reward in all of this, and there's also a thrill for me to be able to go out and go to a store and then seeing that one figure that you were looking for weeks, or just after hearing about it. I mean, there's a thrill in that. Why do I like superheroes? Because I always wanted to be one. I guess. I don't know.
Jim Tudor is one of many thousands of collectors who have made Star Wars toys the most popular action figure collectibles today. He doesn't hesitate to voice his opinions, exhibiting a strong moral sense that may have been inspired by the noble themes of Star Wars.
The main thing I collect would be Star Wars. That's my favorite toys of all time, and the main reason I like Star Wars is because I just grew up on it, really. Totally just grew up on Star Wars. I had the toys when I was little. I had, posters. Just that's all I ever thought about. It was just Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars. I have these vivid images as a young kid. Somebody, when I was probably like 2 or something, they put a poster in my room, one of those, painted collage movie posters of Star Wars, and I just remember staring at it and looking at it and thinking about it, and I didn't even know what it was, and my neighbors all came over, and they were a little bit older, and they would tell me, oh, that's Star Wars, and I don't know, it's fun. The nostalgia is just, a lot of the appeal of this is the nostalgia, and people pay big bucks for the nostalgia. And to me, I remember these things. It's like toys that every neighbor kid had, like the Bionic Man or Stretch Octopus. You stretch this thing, and it really doesn't do anything. You just stretch it, a hard plastic head, and then you whack them with it, and kids hit each other with the Stretch Octopus and get hurt. And vivid memories of that. Sucker Man, that thing you throw at the wall, and he's just all suction cups and just a generic green alien. Just silly stuff. Welcome Back Kotter action figures. It's like, I think the cultural equivalent of having a action figure set of Home Improvement figures these days. I mean, I just don't think it would happen, but back then it did. And to me, it's funny that it did.
Unlike Ken, Jim has a very negative view of modern toy variations.
A different paint scheme or a different card variation or a weapon variation. Only collectors are going to care about that, and collectors are going to go in and spend the money and complain every step of the way and buy them anyway, and the companies know it.
Like many collectors, Andrew Williams pays for his hobby by occasionally dealing in toys on the side. Though he buys new toys to sell, he collects mainly older toys, particularly monsters from the 60s and 70s. Andrew was already well into his adult life before he rediscovered his old love.
I think I really got started collecting toys when I was on vacation in Tennessee. There was a toy museum there, and my fiance and I were looking around in this toy museum, and I spotted these A-High monster figures that I had when I was a kid, and all these memories came back to me, and I thought, wow, these were really, cool things. And, after we got home from vacation, I started to think about those things more, and I decided to see if I could find them. And over the next couple of years, I ended up actually getting a complete set of those, and from then it was just, lots of other toys that I started collecting because I became interested in it.
The Colorforms Outer Spacemen are sought after by many collectors. They have a special importance for Andrew, who went so far as to build a special diorama for them.
I can recall once going into a venture store looking for Colorforms Outer Spacemen with my mother, because they had released a Colorforms actual activity set with the little plastic pieces that you'd put on the background. And I remember that my uncle had some of those figures, and I really wanted them all of a sudden. So I can remember searching the toy stores for them and never finding them.
Though they proved a disappointment in stores, Nightmare Before Christmas toys have become a runaway hit with collectors, including Andrew.
The animation was at a new level. It was beautifully made. In addition to that, it brought back a lot of the memories of the old, the old Rankin Bass animation Christmas stories of my childhood, and I really got a kick out of it. And as soon as the toys came out, I thought the toys were very well made, and I really liked them, and I just snagged up as many as I could. I think toys have got more gadgets, and they have to have 150 different weapons and that kind of stuff now, and they have to light up or blow up or something. And when I was a kid, it was just they were more simple, but I think they had more personality, more character. And I enjoy the older 60s and 70s toys a lot more than the stuff that comes out now.
For self-proclaimed pack rat Bob Monco, toy dealing is a job. He travels around the country, state to state, show to show, earning a living by selling toys. Life on the toy circuit can be a tough way to make a buck.
It's not really as easy as most people think. And, well, last time I checked, I'm still not living in a $500,000 mansion. Been collecting toys for about 16 years. Started picking them up back in right around 1980. Just going to the store and buying the Mego dolls as they were going on clearance sale there. And all other superhero-related pieces and monster items. And just over the years, kind of expanded out to picking up cooler things. Animation cells, some movie posters, a couple of props here and there. Whatever kind of caught my fancy. 10 years ago, people looked at you really weird if you said you collected toys. They're like, why would you want to? Well, now it's very acceptable. It's just like with comic books. Comic books gained acceptability, and all of a sudden the toys just seem to follow, because most of the toys that are out there are comic book related or science fiction or horror related. As far as the Universal monsters go, the creature is the only thing I collect. I really don't care about the Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy, per se, just the creature. But I've always liked giant monsters that came and destroyed cities. And the creature was not a giant monster, but he looked like a monster. He didn't look like a man who had fangs. It's like, ooh, that was scary. Oh, I've always been fond of the wall plaque I'd picked up. It's a vacuform, like approximately 2 foot by 3 foot wall plaque that has the same artwork as the wall it did. Came out in '61. You could order from the back of Famous Monsters magazine. And probably, since it was a three-dimensional vacuform piece, about 2 inches in depth, probably most of them got even broken and damaged in shipping. The aquarium toy came out in '71 by Penplex. Just really a neat toy. You were supposed to put in the aquarium. It wasn't actually licensed through Universal. Henceforth, there's a couple extra like ridges and added onto his stomach, a little bit of different coloration. But it's obvious it was the creature. It was based on the Aurora model kit pose. Godzilla is just what they said. He's the king of the monsters. He's just too cool. I mean, it's large, green dinosaur-like character that's pretty much indestructible. And some of the toys just are incredibly cool. This piece is Japanese Shogun Warrior Godzilla. It roars. It's similar to the US Mattel version. It has the fisted fire, and the feet are about the same with the rollers on it. But the figure itself looks completely different. It actually has the large plastic spines, and the head is molded completely different, and the tail looks like a Godzilla, a big 2 foot plastic Godzilla. Zeroids, their toy line came out in like '68, '69 for my deal. There was 4 different actual robots plus an alien that would self-destruct. And they were, one of the first actual small plastic space toys that came out from like actually motorized, that were not like an actual robot figure.
These are the fabled second series Color Forms aliens. Only 5 sets were produced for display at the 1969 Toy Fair. Bob Monco is one of the few people in the world to own some of these priceless gems.
The Color Form Outer Spaceman. There's some prototypes from the second series that never got released. I have like 4 fairly decent ones, plus one that's missing a few parts out of the 6 that they did. It's just something that was really cool, and when I saw them, I had to have them. I've had so many different items that it's got to be something that's really rare or hard to find for me to really have an interest in it. I mean, if you've had something 25 times, it's not that rare, and you can always go ahead and find another one if you want to spend the money on it. Whereas, the item that you can only find 1 or 2 of ever, maybe in a 10 or 15 year period, that's the item that piques your curiosity and your interest. You can't just walk down to Walmart and buy it if you happen to have whatever the dollar amount might be. The point gets where you only want the really rare items, because if you just kept everything, well, let's face it, you'd have to have a large, large mansion to put all the pieces in.
Mattel's Masters of the Universe was the first hit toy line to break out of the 3 3/4 inch format. But at 6 inches tall, they were still smaller than the standard action figures of the 1970s. He-Man perfectly captured a child's ideal of the dumb macho hero. The villains were comically exaggerated caricatures of what a 5-year-old might call a really scary monster. But the toy's greatest contribution to toy evolution was not their childish design, but their marketing strategy. Masters of the Universe was among the first toy lines to utilize a 30-minute commercial masquerading as a children's cartoon. This angered parents to the point that some wanted Congress to intervene. They didn't, and today, few toy companies would dare launch a new line without a cartoon to go with it. In 1982, Hasbro reintroduced G.I. Joe, but shrunk him down to the 3 3/4-inch format. Aside from the name, these toys had little in common with the earlier 12-inch dolls. But the idea was right for the time, and the Small Joes became the largest toy line in history, continuing the G.I. Joe legacy for another 12 years. Superheroes returned in 1984 with new small format figures from Kenner and Mattel. Kenner's Superpowers collection was meticulously sculpted and perhaps the most accurate toy depiction of the DC heroes ever made. The line featured mostly traditional characters early in its run, but Kenner later began producing newer, less familiar characters that shortened the line's lifespan. Mattel's Secret Wars were released at the same time as the Superpowers. The Mattel set featured only traditional Marvel characters, but was less detailed than the Kenner DC line. Both sets seem almost anachronistic alongside the other popular toys of the era. The mid-'80s saw the development of a generic fantasy genre that blended science fiction with sword and sorcery. This was partly inspired by the success of He-Man. Other influences may have been the role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, and perhaps even Japanese animation. These toys often possessed a dark edge, and like He-Man, were subsidized by info cartoons. They represent a style unique to the era. In 1984, Hasbro introduced the innovative Transformers line. The Transformers were vehicles that could change into robots, combining two different types of play. These trend-setting toys led to similar lines like Voltron. Action figure sales were sagging in the late 80s until the surprise success of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles line in 1988. Based on an underground cult comic book, the Turtles catapulted a small company named Playmates into the big leagues. These original, tongue-in-cheek characters brought a welcome quirkiness to an increasingly dark-toned toy market. In 1989, Kenner once again tried to launch a toy line based on an R-rated film. But unlike the Alien, the RoboCop toys were a success. Matchbox tried to do the same thing with another R-rated character, Freddy Krueger. Max FX was a doll that could dress up as different movie monsters, sort of a dark Captain Action. But the Freddy toys blew up in Matchbox's face, causing so much protest that the rest of the Max FX line was scrapped. But 1989 will always be known as the year of Batman. The release of the first Warner Brothers film created a new Bat fad. An unknown company named Toy Biz held the license and produced a full line of Batman characters and DC superheroes. Toy Biz eventually lost the license to Kenner, but not before the Batman toys had taken Toy Biz from a small company to a dominant force in the market. To protect their toys, many collectors use acid-free comic book backing cards and vinyl comic book bags. They're available in most comic book shops. The backer card should not be too much bigger than the toys card. This will create a more snug fit and prevent the toy from rattling around in the bag. The bag should be taped shut, but not so tightly that it puts stress on the toy's card. Some toy packages are too big for a normal comic book bag. One solution is to cut open several bags and tape them together. For really big boxes, this may not be practical. Clear vinyl drop cloths can be found in most hardware departments. These large sheets will cover almost any size box. This vinyl is not as pure as the kind used in comic book bags, and so they should be changed more frequently, maybe every other year. Collectors often store their toys in office boxes or acid-free comic book boxes. Inexpensive steel shelving may not be attractive, but it is a good way to store a basement full of toys. The most obvious place to find toys is at the toy store. For those who only collect current toys, this will be the source of most of their collection, with toy shows supplying those few toys that play hard to get. But there are also stores that sell vintage toys. This is Decades of Toys, a store that specializes in collectible vintage toys. There are stores like this all over the country, giving collectors a convenient alternative to toy shows and mail-order purchases. Toy Shop first appeared in 1988. Published bi-monthly by Krause Publications, each issue is full of dealer advertising, collector want ads, and toy show listings. At its peak, it all but eclipsed toy shows as the marketplace for the hobby.
You know, when I first started, I thought I must be the only crazy fool out there spending money for this stuff, you know. And then, you know, you look into this publication and you see hundreds of people that do the same thing you do. It's just kind of eye-opening.
Toy Shop can help a collector network with other collectors and dealers around the world. It can also give them access to toys they may not find anywhere else and get a handle on what's really rare and what isn't. Action Figure News and Toy Review is one of the first and most important of all toy magazines. It is a favorite of collectors who want to keep up with the latest toy releases and trends. Since its debut in late 1990, many other magazines have entered the field.
The magazine's very informative. I think they have a lot of good, interesting stories, keep up with the variations, and always seem to get advanced photos of items that are coming up, and it keeps me aware of where my money is going to be going in the future. The Batman figures made exclusively from the Warner Brothers studio stores were sent to the stores at least 4 weeks before it was actually mentioned in any periodical, specifically Action Figure Toys and News Review. And I work at the Warner Brothers store, and when the issue finally came out, we've had so many people buy these figures at an incredible rate. Within the first 2 days the magazine came out, we had a guy come in and buy $500 worth of figures, of these Batman figures. So, yeah, they have a very large impact on how people perceive certain product lines.
Tomart's Guide to Action Figure Collectibles was first published in 1991 and is still generally considered the Bible of the hobby. Several other books have been written to help collectors get a handle on what's available and what it's all worth. Many collectors find these reference guides invaluable, but not everyone has a need for them.
I've never bought a price guide because they're mine. I don't care what they're worth. They're my toys. And so that's the way. I don't believe in price guides. I don't believe in things like that. And my view is basically, it's my toy and it doesn't matter what it's worth. If it's 10 cents or $1,000, it's still my toy. So that's it.
In the 90s, Toy Biz rose to prominence with their Marvel superhero figures. Starting with the basic Marvel characters, the line branched off into X-Men and X-Force, then separate lines for Spider-Man, Iron Man, and the Fantastic Four. Meanwhile, Kenner focused on movie and TV-based toy lines. Among these were eccentric lines such as Swamp Thing and Beetlejuice, steady favorites like Batman, and R-rated movies like Terminator 2. The success of the Terminator and RoboCop lines led Kenner to reconsider marketing the Alien. The sequel, Aliens, had been more action-oriented. So Kenner introduced a line of Aliens toys in 1992, 6 years after the film's release. These ghastly toys were intricately detailed and became a hit with kids and collectors. Kenner expanded the line into Aliens vs. Predator, proving once and for all that R-rated monsters could give kids hours of fun. Kenner kept the scares coming with their 1993 Jurassic Park toys. The authentic-looking dinosaurs featured lifelike skin and gory bite wounds. Playmates began to openly court the collector market with the release of their Toxic Crusaders line in 1991. Each of the early figures were individually numbered, but Toxie and his friends failed to catch on. Playmates tried again with their line of Star Trek The Next Generation toys. Introduced in 1992, these figures featured better sculpting and more articulation than other toys of the era. Each figure was individually numbered and underwent minor variations over time. Playmates took out full-page ads in toy collector publications, pioneering the marketing of toys toward the adult collector. After this, the toy industry as a whole began to recognize and openly court the collecting community. Hasbro released the Nightmare Before Christmas toys in the fall of 1993. The toys were distinctive and original, but sold poorly. Soon after they had disappeared from retail stores, toy collectors discovered them. In a short time, they became the biggest collecting sensation of recent years. After years of dormancy, the figural model kit re-emerged as an underground phenomenon known as the garage kit. These vinyl and resin models were made by small companies and individuals, and often depicted obscure characters from B horror movies. Sculpted with impeccable realism and sometimes disturbing detail, garage kits began to influence mainstream toys. Playmate's skeleton warriors are sculpted with a hyper detail typical of garage kits. Their textured paint scheme also resembles the way many garage kits are painted. Todd McFarlane's Spawn toys also bear the mark of garage kit influence in their textured sculpture and layered paint scheme. The Spawn figures set a new standard for modern action figure design, although some find their appearance too diabolical. The 12-inch G.I. Joe doll returned in 1991 with a limited edition Duke figure, sold only at Target stores. The line grew from there, culminating in 1994 with the 30th anniversary Armed Forces dolls. Barbie celebrated her 35th birthday that same Christmas with a reissue of the original 1959 doll. In 35 years, we've gone from the 59 Barbie and the 12-inch Joe all the way to the 59 Barbie and the 12-inch Joe.
The advice I'd give new collectors would be buy what you like. That's it. I mean, I spent a lot of time and a lot of money buying things because I thought they'd be worth money, because I thought I'd be able to get some return on my investment here, you know? And I really don't think it's going to happen. You know, I don't have the time to become a dealer myself. I stockpiled a lot of stuff for no reason. You know, the Star Wars things I like. That's why they're open. That's why they're back here. They're sentimental. I'd say buy what you like. Don't necessarily be afraid to open your toys, you know. And don't think you're going to get rich off of this. It's all for fun.
The biggest thing is, you know, people want to speculate, and they'll go to a Kmart and they'll buy 10 or 15 of one thing. But everybody does that, so it's pretty useless to do that. The best thing I say, and I tell everyone this, whether it's models, toys, whatever, just collect what you like and what you want to keep forever. And then when you die, someone else will sell it, and then you won't have to worry about it anymore.
If I had any advice to a toy collector that was starting to collect high-priced items, I would have to say, when you spend that money, think of that money as being spent. Don't necessarily think of it as an investment, because these toys are not nearly as liquid as far as their asset than regular money or something. I mean, you buy the toy, and if you ever want to resell that toy, it takes a great deal of effort and money for advertising and that type thing, or to buy a spot at a show. I mean, to sell the toy. So be careful. Don't overspend. Don't use the plastic too much, because you can dig a deep hole, you know.
Yeah, if you like it, you know, if you want to buy one to keep and one to sell, and you really think you can sell it, go for it. But I mean, if you're making the decision here, well, gee, should I go hungry today or buy a second one of these toys? You know, I would think, you know, eat lunch instead. The chances of you actually selling it, unless you dive in full bore and become a dealer, you know, it's pretty small chance that you're actually, you know, going to be able to turn around and sell this thing.
As far as an investment type thing, I you know, play the stock market. Don't buy toys for an investment necessarily, because oftentimes the things that you buy now can sell immediately for more money. If you wait longer, oftentimes you have a toy that actually goes down and decreases in value.
The only way I obtain it is to go out to the stores and find these things, and it's gotten to the point where the people that work there and they're, you know, dealers and collectors will hold this stuff that off the shelves and wait for someone to come in and buy it all. It's really bad with starting lineups, and it's getting really bad with certain action figures. The Megalobogia was a really tough one to get. I had to be there at the time it arrived to actually get it. Otherwise, there's always stock people in the back that hold them back for other people. But once you go to the toy shows, everybody has them, and no one wants them because no one wants to pay for it. And I think the dealers are sometimes out of money because they think they've got something, and they just can't unload it. And they'll hold on to it for years, but in the long run, no one's going to want it because supply is going to catch up with demand.
If someone has a genuine interest in the hobby, the most important thing to remember is just, stay within your budget, collect what you enjoy, what makes you happy, and don't worry about other things like, is this going to be worth money in a few years? So what? If you collect for yourself.
I know I went through this phase, and a lot of other people did too, of driving around the city looking through every store for the rare toys, and as a result, here's my basement filled up. I've got stuff put away in boxes that I'm not going to show in this thing tonight because I'm not proud that I bought all this stuff. I've spent lots and lots and lots of money on toys I don't care about because they were supposed to have been worth money. I bought them thinking they were going to be worth money. This was before my first toy show. Then I walked into the toy show, and there's all my rare toys worth money. I thought I was sitting on a gold mine, but you know what? I wasn't. It was just, I don't know, it was just like the dealers had gone in and gotten the toys, and that's where they all went. And when I found one, the only reason was because I beat a dealer to it. And I think the kids are the ones losing in this case because they're getting robbed of the toys they really want. I think if you're going to be buying toys for investment and there's a kid in the lane, the toy aisle, and the kid is looking for that one toy, say, good grief, give it to the kid, let's not be greedy jerks here.
I remember the old dime store I would visit when I was a kid. It's closed down now, but I still remember finding my way to the toy aisle. What would it be like to stand in that aisle again? Would it be as I remember it? How would it be different? I don't know what good it would do to stand in that aisle once again, but I do wish I could visit it just one more time.